If you work in medicine your whole life, you learn one thing. Trust is a prescription that can save a life or ruin it. I'm Marjorie, 72, and I worked for decades as a medical administrator. I know how to read every tricky insurance code and every hidden rule the hospital uses. When I retired, I thought my biggest worry would be remembering which day the garbage goes out. Hello, everyone. I'm Marjorie, and this is the story of how I took down my own son in law for fraud. Before we get into the hidden insurance codes, tell me quickly in the comments where you are watching from. And if you believe that experience always defeats greed, please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. My trouble started with my daughter's husband, my son in law, Evan. Evan was a smooth talker, a personal trainer who started his own company, the Wellness Fund. He said he was going to help old people live longer and healthier. He convinced me to invest my savings, and worse, he convinced me to let him use my name, Dr. Marjorie Vance's practice, on his board. He knew my reputation in this community was solid gold. I thought I was helping my daughter and my community. The money came in fast. Evan bought a massive new SUV and a flashy watch, claiming it with all business growth. I was worried, but I trusted him until Mrs. Peterson, my dear friend and neighbor, came to me in tears. She showed me her insurance statement, which had huge, confusing charges from the Wellness Fund for longevity testing she never had. I knew that charge instantly. It was a high-cost insurance code used for specialized tests that required special machines. Evan didn't have those machines. I confronted him later that evening. I asked him, "Evan, where did you get the results from Mrs. Peterson's longevity test? You don't have the machine for it." He didn't panic. He just looked at me with a cold, dismissive smile that went right through me. "Marjorie," he said, using my first name to make it feel cold. "I know you're retired, and I know these new business models are complex, but frankly, at your age, you just don't have the mental clarity to understand the insurance codes anymore. You need to stop worrying about the details." That was the line that turned my trust into icy, focused fury. He didn't just insult my intelligence, he dismissed my entire professional life and used my good name to hurt my friends. He was running a scam, and he was counting on my age to keep me silent. He didn't know that when a medical administrator gets angry, she doesn't call the police right away. She calls for the patient charts and the billing codes. He was about to find out that my ethical code did not retire when I did. Evan's dismissal of my mental clarity was the fuel I needed. He thought he could bury his crimes under confusing insurance paperwork, but he forgot that complicated paperwork was my language for 40 years. I knew exactly where to look for the lies. My first mission was to prove that the longevity testing was fake, a phantom service. I obtained a copy of the fund's promotional packet, which listed all the services they offered. I focused on the most expensive ones. I cross-referenced the service descriptions with the current national insurance codes. The fraud was immediately clear. Evan was using specific high-cost codes that required special equipment and certified doctors. He was using a simple office and a generic nurse. I knew that insurance fraud isn't about finding a missing dollar. It's about finding a consistent, impossible pattern. I created a secret digital ledger. I called it the Truth File. I filled it with every piece of evidence I could find. Screenshots of Evan's flashy Instagram posts showing his wealth, the fund's misleading brochures, and most importantly, the actual insurance codes he used. I needed the patient's billing statements, the EOBs, to prove the charges were fake. I called Mrs. Peterson and 3 other elderly friends, telling them gently that their insurance seemed to be making mistakes. I asked them to send me copies of the statements with the strange charges, promising I would sort out the paperwork. They were happy to hand the confusing documents over to a retired professional like me. I analyzed the statements in my study, surrounded by my own medical textbooks. The pattern was horrifying. Every single friend was billed for the same expensive specialized services they never received. Evan wasn't just committing a random crime. He was running a phantom billing scheme, a systematic theft where his only tool was paperwork and his only protection was the belief that his victims and I were too old and confused to question him. I knew my next step had to be to warn my friends, but quietly, without alerting Evan. I realized that if Evan kept running his scam, my entire social circle would be financially ruined. I couldn't call a large meeting, as that would alert Evan through gossip. My warning had to be surgical and silent. I organized a small, private gathering at my house, inviting only the 3 most trusted and financially sharpest friends who were already Evan's victims. I called them my board of whispers. I served tea and cookies, maintaining the calm facade, but the subject was serious. I laid out the evidence not with emotion, but with the cold logic of the codes. I showed them the high-cost codes and then showed them the actual wellness fund office, a single room with a simple folding table. Evan is charging you for a surgical suite, I explained, but he is only providing a handshake. They were shocked, heartbroken, and furious. They realized Evan wasn't just stealing their money. He was betraying my trust, which was their trust. I didn't ask them to contact the police. I asked them to become my compliance team. I gave them specific, simple tasks. Patient log, discreetly keep a simple calendar log of every service they actually receive from the fund. Code collection, gather all future billing statements, EOBs, and highlight every strange code. This was vital. If we went to the state regulators with just my word, it would look like an old family dispute. With 4 separate, consistent patient logs and billing statements, it was an irrefutable community audit. Evan thought he was safe because he was cheating dozens of people who wouldn't communicate. He didn't realize I had organized them into a silent, powerful compliance network ready to expose his crime. The compliance team delivered overwhelming proof. We had 4 sets of documents where the same high-cost codes were billed, but the patient log showed only brief, uncertified consultations. The phantom billing scheme was running perfectly, just as Evan planned. I now had to prepare for Evan's counterattack. I knew that when I finally confronted him, he would try to frame me as the responsible party. I decided to use his own arrogance against him. I called him not with accusations, but with false concern. Evan, I'm having trouble understanding the statements. I think my name being on the board might be causing confusion. I want to step down. He jumped at the chance. He showed up immediately with a thick legal document that looked official. He told me it was a simple form to remove my name, but my training kicked in. I read the document very carefully. It wasn't just a removal form, it was a liability transfer agreement, a paper that would legally make me responsible for the fund's financial decisions for the last 2 years, shifting all the fraud liability onto me. He was trying to use my trust one last time to make me the official scapegoat. Marjorie, just sign it quickly. We need this paperwork for compliance. I played the confused senior perfectly. Oh dear, I seem to have left my special pen upstairs. I'll need a minute.
I used that minute to discreetly take a photo of the document with my phone. I came back downstairs and handed the document back unsigned and said, "I think I need my daughter to explain all this complicated language to me first, Evan." He left furious but trapped. He had revealed his entire plan, and I had the proof of his criminal intent.
I knew Evan would accelerate his plan to frame me now that I refused to sign the liability transfer. I needed a professional opinion from someone outside the conflict to confirm the depth of the fraud and the danger I was in. I called Dr. Simon, a former colleague and friend who now worked as a compliance officer for a major insurance carrier. I didn't tell him Evan was my son-in-law. I described the wellness fund's structure and billing patterns as a theoretical case study. I showed him the liability transfer agreement Evan tried to push on me. Dr. Simon's reaction was immediate and grave. He confirmed that the fund was a classic Ponzi scheme, using new investor money and fraudulent insurance billing to pay off early investors and cover Evan's lavish lifestyle. He was about to run out of money. Dr. Simon confirmed that the liability transfer agreement was a criminal attempt to set me up as the scapegoat. "Marjorie," he warned, "Evan is desperate. He needs a mentally unfit senior citizen to take the blame before the whole thing collapses. You are in danger." That was the only confirmation I needed. My revenge had to move from gathering evidence to launching an immediate, overwhelming counterstrike. I created my final, most crucial document, the Book of Truth. This was a comprehensive index report that included every piece of evidence: the compliance team's patient logs, the billing codes, the photographs of Evan's fake office, and the photograph's liability transfer agreement, proving his criminal intent. I was ready to call in the regulators. Evan, desperate to find his scapegoat, hired a fancy corporate lawyer named Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis was cold, aggressive, and clearly convinced I was suffering from senility. They called me in for a mandatory meeting, claiming it was a mediation, but it was really an interrogation designed to make me slip up. They spent an hour asking me complex medical and financial questions, trying to prove I was confused. I kept my answers short, polite, and vague, maintaining the sweet, overwhelmed grandma act. I let them believe they were winning. Then Mr. Davis pushed me again to sign a different document and power of attorney. I played along perfectly. "Oh dear," I sighed, "I don't trust papers unless I hear a voice I know." I secretly activated the recording function on my phone, which was sitting discreetly in my purse. I then asked the lawyer directly, "Mr. Davis, if I sign this, does it mean Evan becomes responsible for all the past money troubles of the wellness fund?" Mr. Davis, thinking he was securing Evan's future and my downfall, nodded and clearly stated, "Yes, Mrs. Vance, it means you are legally removed from all past liabilities and Evan becomes the responsible party." I quickly turned off the recorder. The lawyer had just admitted on tape that the fund had money troubles, which they still denied publicly, and that Evan was trying to find a way out. I politely refused to sign the paper, claiming I just didn't feel right about it. I left the room, holding the audio recording of the lawyer's incriminating statement. Evan and his lawyer had just provided the ultimate audio proof of the liability shift and the fund's failure. The time for waiting was over. Evan was running out of victims and money, and the Ponzi scheme was about to implode. I knew I needed to act before he declared bankruptcy and escaped justice, or before he successfully framed me.
I decided the only way to protect my community and myself was to go straight to the top regulators. I contacted my former colleague, Dr. Simon, who had confirmed the scheme. Dr. Simon agreed to submit the Book of Truth, my compliance report, and the new audio recording of the lawyer's admission to the State Financial Regulation Board and the Department of Insurance's Fraud Division. The complaint was filed anonymously under Dr. Simon's organization, ensuring Evan wouldn't suspect me. The impact was immediate and devastating. The Financial Regulation Board saw the explicit proof of insurance fraud, the high-cost codes, and the criminal intent, the recorded liability shift. Within 48 hours, the state issued an emergency order. The Wellness Fund was frozen and placed under investigation. Evan was completely blindsided. His money supply, the stream of fraudulent insurance payments, stopped instantly. He drove straight to my house. Bypassing the warning signs, he pounded on my door, screaming my name. I opened the door just enough to see his frantic, angry face. "You traitor! You told them! You are ruining our family!" I closed the door calmly, saying only, "Evan, you taught me that paperwork is complex. I just wanted to make sure your fund was compliant." I had won the regulatory battle, and Evan had lost his mind.
Evan's emotional outburst proved he was guilty, but I knew the legal process was slow. To ensure the state regulators were forced to act quickly and decisively, I launched my media strike. I called Mr. Jones, a local investigative journalist I had known for years from my time in hospital administration. He trusted my professionalism and my ethics. I gave Mr. Jones a limited, simple version of the Book of Truth, the photographic evidence of the fake office, the list of high-cost codes, and the recorded admission of liability. I ensured I was not quoted directly, only that a respected retired medical professional was the source. The media coverage was explosive. The local news ran a massive story. Wellness Fund exposed, scanning seniors with fake health codes. The story prominently featured the list of high-cost codes Evan used, translating the complex insurance fraud into simple, understandable theft. Public pressure was immediate and immense. The Regulation Board, facing massive public scrutiny, had no choice but to move swiftly. They immediately issued a warrant for Evan's arrest based on the overwhelming evidence of systemic fraud and the audio proof of the liability scheme. Evan was formally arrested in front of his fraudulent office. My professional network and my community audit had achieved the ultimate justice. The Wellness Fund collapsed entirely. Evan was disgraced and in custody, facing multiple counts of financial fraud. The hardest part was dealing with my daughter, Evan's wife, who was heartbroken but eventually realized the depth of her husband's criminal enterprise. My focus immediately shifted to my community. I worked with the state financial regulators, using my knowledge to help them untangle the Ponzi scheme. My compliance team, the Board of Whispers, provided flawless documentation allowing the state to freeze Evan's assets quickly and identify funds that could be returned to victims. The recovery was slow, but successful. My elderly friends were saved from financial ruin. My reputation was restored and enhanced. I was hailed by the community as a quiet hero. The ultimate shame for Evan was that he was destroyed by the very thing he used to shield himself, my good name. He was exposed as a common criminal by the mentally confused old woman he thought he could betray. 1 year later, the chaos was over. Evan was facing justice, and the Wellness Fund was officially defunct. My life and the lives of my friends were secure. I sat in my study, surrounded by my old medical textbooks, and reviewed the final state audit. I realized my retirement was the most meaningful phase of my career. My age had given me the patience and perspective to see the systemic rot that Evan had created. I didn't retire my knowledge, I redirected it. I used the money recovered from my legal fees to establish a small local organization, the Elder Guard. We check the billing statements and insurance codes of vulnerable seniors to ensure they're not victims of the next fraudster. I found a new powerful purpose. I looked at my desk, where my old stethoscope lay beside my current notebook, the Book of Truth. I realized my ethical code had never retired. I had leveraged my medical professionalism to protect my community, proving that experience, meticulousness, and ethical resolve are the most powerful weapons against fraud. Never too old to check the codes, and certainly never too old to save your community.